Hello, Dr. Gabrielle. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Risa?
I'm hanging in there. Today, we're going
Excellent.
to talk all things residency and permanent temporary visa stuff. This is like kind of the first thing that people think about, right? When they decide that they're going to want to move to Mexico, it's like, how am I going to be able to stay there,
Right.
essentially?
At least
Um,
they should be.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of start off a little bit with your background, kind of how you got into this. I know you live in Mexico City, um, your relationship to Mexico City, and then how you became kind of a residency expert.
Yeah, of course. Well, I fell in love with Mexico when I was down here studying abroad in college. We won't mention how long ago that was, but many, many years ago. And then after I had finished my PhD in the States, I decided, I really want to go back to Mexico. I've always wanted to come back. It's now or never. Um, Go and see if it works, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't, but at least I know I did it. So started applying for jobs down here. Got a job at a school as the English coordinator for their elementary school, and moved down here on January 2nd of 2020. Started officially working at the school a little bit later. Sorry, fly. It's really warm here right now, which ex- really warm for here. So all the windows are open. You might see me.
I am jealous. Let's just put it that way.
That's true. This is true. I'll take what we have over what you're probably in right now because
Yes.
I don't do cold. Hence why you're in a scarf and I am in short sleeves. Anyway, so I came down to work at a school. Pandemic hit. Life kind of slowed down a lot, as everybody in the world knows. And after about a year and a half, that job I got laid off of because of, you know, repercussions from the pandemic. So I had started to look for other work and had a friend that said, hey, I have been helping people with their visas. I have a lot of experience in this. I know that while you are looking for other work, you could probably use some side income. Why don't you help me out a little bit and I'll teach you how to do this? Or, well, actually, it started with, why don't you help me out a little bit? Anytime you see someone, or meet someone, I'll give you a little bit of a commission. And then after, I don't know, a few months of that, I'd found another job. I was actually also working my other job and I was doing this. And he said, hey, I'm so busy. Why don't I just teach you how to do it and you can take on your own clients? And after a period of time, that just kind of really took off. I did a YouTube video with another travel YouTuber and, word spread and here we are. It's been about 2 years of full time, 2 or 3 years of us doing it full time, with me having people that help me out on the ground. And yeah, that's how we got started and that's how we took off and we hope to keep it rolling.
Yeah. Happy accident, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it seems
Exactly.
like you have the demeanor to handle getting people residency because it doesn't seem like a very kind of straight line process. Um, uh, so maybe actually you can, before we even kind of get into how complicated it can get, let's just start at A, right? Let's just
Yeah.
start at the very beginning. Um, so there are essentially two different kinds of residency visas, correct?
Yes. I mean,
Temporary
yes.
and permanent.
Temporary and permanent, correct.
So can you explain the difference between the two?
Yes. So, temporary visa is what most people start out with. That is a visa that means that you're going to be here for up to 4 years. The first year, you get it for 1 year initially, and then after 1 year, if you know you want to stay longer, you can renew for up to a period of 3 years. That takes you to your total of 4 years. If you want to continue here, you love Mexico like I do, um, and stay here indefinitely, then you convert that temporary to to permanent residency. And permanent residency is just that. It's permanent. You have no in-country requirements, unlike some other countries. You can come and go as you please. Permanent residency, you don't have to renew in any way. The only thing if you're supposed to do is every 10 years go in and update your picture. And that's that. Permanent residency is very hard to get straight out the chute unless you are a retiree or a pensioner. Retiree, but different countries have different verbiage. So for Americans, it's retired. Some other countries, you have to be considered a pensioner. But and that has a higher income requirement. And in a lot of consulates, they also require you to be of what is considered retirement age. Each consulate defines their retirement age a little bit differently. Some consulates at 60, some at 62, some it's you have to be above 64. So those are the very basics, basic.
So what's to prevent someone from just, using their tourist visa and going in and out every few months? Like, is that a thing, or is it really kind of frowned upon?
It's definitely a thing that people still do. I mean, there are a lot of people that don't qualify for visas based on economic solvency since it has skyrocketed so much. There are many downfalls to that. One is that it's all digitized now, so all of their entries are in the system. So you could be coming in and out for 10 years, and then all of a sudden you get an agent that says, hey, I see that you have come in and out of the country every 6 months for the last, 3 years, let's say. And you only leave for 2 days at a time, and then you come right back in. You live here. You are not a tourist. You are actually living here. And you get 3 days to, and I've seen someone have 3 days written in their passport. You have 3 days to go get your stuff, and then go back and get residency or leave the country.
Wow.
I also had someone that had literally, the agent wrote like "Última noticia," like last notice in their physical passport. Now, how often does that happen? I don't know. I'm not talking everybody that's coming in and out of the country on a regular basis, but for those that really want to live here, residency is really important. Not just for that, not just for their sake, but first off, you're then paying, the proper tax to the immigration office that you should be paying if you're truly a resident here. I mean, coming to Mexico, you really should be responsible and paying that immigration tax that you pay when you get your residency card. It's a one-time thing. Well, it's not a one-time thing. It's every time you renew or every time you get your initial, you pay a tax to immigration. Second off, it's very hard, and I speak for Mexico City mainly because that's where I'm based. But second off, it's hard to do a lot of things without residency. Open a bank account. You have to have minimum residency, and some banks require you to have a tax ID number. Some do not. But opening up a bank account, getting housing. If you want to do it with, a proper landlord, proving, a lot of landlords I know are asking for proof of residency for that specific reason of, they can have a tenant that comes in, they're here, they're like, no, I'm here, I signed a 1-year lease, they leave, they try to do a border run, they come back in, they get 3 days, and then the tenant's like, well, guess I'm off to Thailand, or, wherever the next digital nomad hotspot is. And nothing wrong with digital nomads and digital nomad hotspots, but for the landlord's sake, it's protection for them to know that the person's actually a resident. Because there's also this thing that you get as a tenant and a landlord. A lot of landlords do this. It's kind of like an insurance policy. And in order to do that, they need to have your residency information in order to generate that policy. Most of the time. I don't know of anyone that can do it without, but again, not a realtor or, but a lot of realtors my realtor requires you to be my landlord requires you to be a permanent resident to be able to rent from her. She wants to know that she has zero risk. zero risk. And so these are just some of the benefits to having residency on top of being a responsible immigrant to Mexico.
Right. Right. Well, it
Enjoyed
makes
it.
sense, right? And I know over the last few years, we've done a few of these videos now, and it seems like every single time I talk to you, like the price is like almost doubled, I'm just like, wow.
Yeah,
Um, so if you can just kind of walk through what the process is like
absolutely.
to get your temporary residency. I don't know if it's the same for permanent residency as well in terms of the actual process. And then we'll go over some of the costs involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Temporary residency, you would start at a consulate outside of Mexico. So a Mexican consulate outside of Mexico. And you would contact them. The I've said this a million times and I'll say it a million times more. The only consistency, right, is inconsistency. So, depending on which consulate you're applying to, depending on which visa you're applying to, will depend on what documents you need to bring, how you make the appointment, and what the financial requirements are. So it's not uniform. Each consulate has their own requirements. Each consulate has a different way of making an appointment. Each consulate has a different financial threshold. So, your first stop is to what I call consulate shop. I get a lot of people that have already been in Mexico for a while, and they're like, "Hey, I'm ready to be legal here. I want to be legal here. Or, I want to open a bank account. I want to whatever X, Y, or Z. I don't want a chance getting 3 days the next time I come in." So they're like, "What do I do?" So in those cases, I suggest a list of consulates that accept people from outside of their jurisdiction. So there are some consulates that it doesn't matter if you are from Zimbabwe or New Zealand, you can go to X consulate within the United States, right?
Are there benefits to doing that? Just because if their fees are lower?
Or it's easier for them to get to, or they have appointments sooner, or whatever. Yeah, there are a couple consulates that have lower fees, or not fees, but the fees the same for everyone is 53 USD for the visa, but lower financial thresholds. So, but the benefit would be trying to get an appointment sooner or whatever that may be. So you start by finding the consulate. And if you have the ability to travel, I've had people go to Vegas from here. I've had people go to El Paso from Philadelphia because they had an earlier appointment or whatever the case may be. There's so many different reasons that people do these things. If you're in the United States and you are just thinking about making the move to Mexico, most people will use their local consulate. Because that's obviously the easiest. And in some cases, you don't have to use your local consulate, but in some consulate cases, for example, Seattle, you have to be within Seattle's jurisdiction. You have to have proof of address within X category of zip codes in order to use a Seattle consulate. However, if you're from Seattle, you don't have to use a Seattle consulate. You could go to Phoenix, for example. So each consulate varies. Some people will consulate shop because the numbers may be off by $20 a month. Like I don't know off the top of my head any of the numbers because they all changed in January, and not a lot of places have updated their actual websites. So the best is to contact them and ask specifically. I went to apply for residency based on economic solvency. That's what they're doing, based on economic solvency. What are your requirements? And in asking this, you're asking, what are the financials? Like, what is your financial threshold? And what documentation do you require? Because some require a letter from an employer saying that you are allowed to work remotely from outside of the country. Some just want a letter from an employer stating that you're in good status with your employer. Some want pay stubs. Some only need the financials, your bank statement. So everything varies. So some people will consulate shop because they're like, oh, I can't get a letter from my employer. Or I can get a letter from my employer, but it's not going to have a wet signature on it because my entire company is digital or Oh, this consulate requires 4,441, while this one only requires 4,419. I make 4,422 net a month. I gotta go to that one because I'm $8 short on the other one, or whatever that math is. I don't do math. But you get my point. So there's consulate shopping. So that part, it sounds a little bit more complicated than it is, but I'm trying to be as thorough as possible to throw out all of the options that you could need to look at when starting the process. Some
that's
consulates,
great.
some consulates book out really far in advance, so you have to, just be on them. Some consulates only open up appointments on a specific day, say the first Tuesday of every month for the following month. Some consulates are like, hey, we got openings, walk on in. It's so different. That's why I say you just consulate shop. Get on the SRE website and, look for the consulates that are available and just start looking for an email. It usually has like visas.con in there somewhere. And that'll tell you that that's the email that you need to be using to contact someone about visas. Step 1, finding an appointment, making sure you meet the requirements, making sure you have the correct documentation. Then, once you're actually approved, once you get your appointment, you're approved, you get a visa and your passport, and that visa
How long?
is...
Sorry, let me just go back. So how long does that take from like applying to when you actually get that temporary visa to be able to go?
Depends on how long it takes you to get an appointment at the consulate. But once you have your appointment, you mean?
Yeah.
Again, it depends on the consulate.
I sense a theme here.
It depends on the consulate. So Chicago, for example, is the only one I know that takes the longest. It can take up to 10 days for them to approve you. You leave your passport with them, and they'll call you and say your visa is ready, you've been approved, or you have not been approved for whatever reason. Phoenix used to take a couple of days. I've been hearing lately that if your appointment's in the morning, you can go and pick up your passport in the afternoon. But I always suggest people, if they're going to Phoenix, that they plan for at least spending one night in Phoenix. Because I'll know people that'll fly to a city, go to their appointment, and have a flight booked for that night to come back. So it depends. I wish I could. People are like, can you give me a straight answer? I'm like, I wish I could, but I can't. And it's not me. Like, I do my best, The process can be a little chaotic. It can be a lot chaotic. It just really depends. Or it can be really smooth sailing, It really depends on where you're going.
Which is why it's really helpful to have someone like you, right? To hire someone like you to walk you through the process, because it can get so confusing. And as we will talk in a little bit, there are very serious repercussions if you screw up, right?
Correct. However, there's not a lot we can do on the consulate side. Legally, we can't do anything. That has to be done by the applicant themselves. What we can do is say, okay, so this is your situation. You want X, Y, and Z. You plan on retiring, or you're not of retirement age, but you have the financials or whatever. These are the consulates I suggest. And then just give them the list, and then they, contact them or look at their website, or I help, see how they make their appointments, because there's an online booking system. There is a phone booking system. There are a lot of consulates you just book directly via email. Some consulates allow walk-ins. So that's a whole thing. That's a whole process. But yeah, in regards to hiring someone on the Mexican end, because that's a second process, a lot of people think that once they have their visa, they have their residency, and no, there's a whole second portion that takes place.
Which is really, really important.
Yes.
The
key.
Yeah.
Well,
and you don't want to find out the hard way that you don't have your visa, right?
Right, exactly. So, really quickly, I'll just go over the permanent. So permanent would be the same exact procedure if you're starting at the consulate, but you have to meet the qualifications for permanent. Majority of consulates require you to be of retirement age and or prove that you are actually retired. So a social security letter, a pension letter, some sort of proof of retirement. and you have to hit a much higher financial threshold for permanent residency straight out the chute. I mean, in the area, if you're doing it based on income, oh, I forgot to go over that. So there's two routes also. It's either monthly income or savings slash investments. Monthly income is you have to show 6 months of consistent income that meet that financial threshold. And savings and investments, it has to be 12 months ending balance, consistent ending balance of that financial threshold. And that differs.
This is for permanent or for both permanent and temporary?
Yeah, you can qualify either or, temporary or permanent, via 6 months of income or 12 months of savings slash investment. It's one or the other, not both. And that, so again, the 6 months, if you're going by income, 6 months must be consistent income. You know, you can't be like, oh, I took a leave of absence, or, you know, I was on FMLA and I had two weeks where I didn't have the same paycheck, but everything else is more than what's required for those last 6 months. It's not going to work. You have to show it's consistently getting that amount. And then for savings, you have to show that ending balance. It does not matter if you had $1 million 1 month and then you bought a $900,000 home and then won the lottery, but you know, it does not matter. Ending balance for 12 months, period. So that you have to meet those thresholds. And then for permanent, depending on the consulate, you also have to meet either the age or the proof of retirement requirement as well.
And that ending balance or the monthly, you know, income, the monthly income is net income as well, right? So that is not gross. This is after taxes, whatever is showing up in your bank account.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes, but that gets a little tricky because there are a lot of self-employed people out there and they're not checking your tax returns. So if that makes sense, because like, you know, I've got a lot of people that are like contractors. Contractors get paid with a 1099. Sorry for non-Americans that don't know our tax verbiage, but you know, a contractor gets paid with a 1099, right? Like they're not paying their taxes necessarily
Right.
monthly. So they're just seeing what's going in. So when they say net, it's kind of subjective. It's kind of gray. You know, if you have a salary, then obviously yes, net. But if you don't have a salary, if you earn your income in a different thing, a different manner than just a straight salaried human, they're not asking for tax returns or other expenses usually. I've never heard of that, but
Well, I guess if they see the deposit in the account, that's what they consider your income, I guess.
Correct.
And it just has to be consistent. So for temporary and for permanent, then I know that the amount is different depending on the consulate, but can you give like kind of a roundabout, so just so folks have an idea of how much they need to make per month or have in savings for temporary or permanent?
Yes.
So that it's not, because it's kind of close, right? It's just not completely, like, it's not savings of $10,000 versus like, you know, $100,000.
Correct. No, I mean, last year there was one that was like $700 less than all the other consulates, so people were, you know, swarming them. But I think they've adjusted so that they're more on par with everybody else. So the numbers go up annually, and it's based on Mexican minimum wage. Mexican minimum wage, which is great for Mexicans, has gone up approximately 17 to 20% annually. So, which is fabulous because minimum wage here is just absurdly low. So right now, temporary residency is upwards of $40 to $4,400 monthly income for 6 months, or between, from what I've seen in a couple different consulate websites, upwards of $75,000 to $100,000 USD savings or investments, ending balance for 12 months.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. It is. I mean, as you and I have talked about and off screen, I as a teacher would never have I wouldn't qualify anymore. Luckily, I did previously. So and then for permanent, it's pushing 7,000, if not over 7,000 per month, and in the 200s for savings or investments.
200K or more.
200K or more. Yeah.
USD.
USD. Yeah. Now that can be, so some places want that to be in a liquid savings account, like a straight savings account. Most places will allow it to be an investment account, like say Schwab, stocks, that sort of thing. If you're under retirement age and you're applying for permanent, a lot of times they won't take, say, your pension account, if that makes sense. Because you can't have access to that until you are of pension age, whatever that may be, and you know what I mean? So they won't look at your, I don't know, Arizona State Retirement System, for example, which is what I have. And they won't look at that and say, oh, yeah, great, you have X amount of dollars, but you're only 44 and you don't have access to that for another 12 years. So, sorry, that doesn't count because you can't liquidate that right now. But if I had X dollars in, say, I don't know, Schwab as index funds and ETFs and all that good stuff. I'm learning a bunch of new words right now. And so
Look at you being fancy.
Look at me being fancy. My brother-in-law would be so proud. He's a financial advisor. But yeah, so as long as you can liquidate it, unless you are of pension age, and then obviously they will take your pension because you are able to access that.
That's great.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So if you have so if you have temporary residency for 4 years,
Yes.
right? And then
Yes.
the next step, of course, is to go to permanent residency.
Correct.
Do you still have to have those same financial thresholds?
No. So once you get your temporary residency, everything else is done within Mexico. So you get your residency, you come here March 30th of 2024. The following year, you're able to renew up to 30 days prior to your expiration. You renew, say, March 3rd, 2025. And then at that point, you can renew for 3 years. So you would renew up until March of 2028. And then in March of 2028, you go in and you would say, I have been here as a temporary resident for 4 years. I would like to convert to my permanent residency based on time. And Mexico City does not require any financials. Some offices do require you show financials, but not that threshold. They just want to know that you are still, you can still support yourself. And some do ask for that actually too at the renewal, not in Mexico City, but at the renewal they'll ask just for 3 months of bank statements to show that you still have income coming in so you can support yourself here in Mexico. But it's not that 4,000 whatever, because you don't need that much money to live in Mexico. So as long as you can show you're supporting yourself. But yeah, no, it's based on time. The law, it's based on time. I don't know if I want to use law or rule, but so 4 years, you convert to permanent. And then you're permanent. You're good to go. I have a lot of people that are really chomping at the bit. I want to get permanent straight out the chute. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I understand, I guess, because you don't have to pay the fees more than once. You don't have to worry about going to the immigration office multiple times. But at the same time, temporary versus permanent, there are only slight differences. It costs a little bit more money for temporary because you do have to pay for the renewals, and but other than that, it's, permanent residency allows you to work. Permanent residency does not allow you to have a foreign plated vehicle in Mexico. So some people actually like to are like, can I extend my temporary? I don't want to deal with getting a new car. It's
so you can have a foreign plated vehicle if you have a temporary residency,
but not as a permanent.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Unless you live in the free zone, which is a whole other story. But the free zone is like Sonora, Baja California, and then I believe parts of the Yucatan as well. Like the zones that border other countries. But yeah,
Right.
but that's a
Right.
whole other topic that I don't
Yes.
like to get into because it confuses me. Where do I get
My
my
head's
tip?
already spinning. Okay. It's like,
I know. So,
um, so let me ask you, what are some of the bigger mistakes that you see people doing that are kind of red flags to you? Like, what should people kind of keep top of mind to make sure that they could have as smooth of a process as possible?
the first when they go to the consulate is making sure that they made their appointment for a visa. So the consulates are there to serve Mexican citizens living abroad, right? It's not to serve foreigners that want to get residency in the U.S. It is a service they provide, but their role is to serve their citizens living abroad. That is their function. So a lot of people will say, oh, I have an appointment, and their appointment will say passport. Well, that's for a Mexican that needs to renew their passport, right? Or it'll say, who knows, birth certificate or something. And then they show up and they're like, oh, they rejected me because I didn't have the right appointment. So making sure that they're making an appointment for a visa. That's really like step one. And if they're using the email system, that's easier to avoid because they will tell them exactly what they need to do to make a visa appointment. But the website can be confusing, and people are like, "Oh, finally, I found an appointment at the consulate I want to use. Got it." And then it's like, "You have an appointment to get your child's passport," and it's not the right appointment. And then second step, once they're at the consulate, making sure that they have all the documentation that the consulate told them that they need to bring. And I say always bring more rather than less. Like, even if the consulate didn't say to bring this, if you have it available to you, an employment contract, whatever it is, or, bring it with you. Just have as much insurance, I guess, for lack of a better word, evidence, I don't know, to show that you qualify. Once you have that visa in your passport, confirm that all the data is correct. I recently had someone whose birth date was incorrect, birth year was incorrect. One time I had someone whose birth, I believe is their birth year again, was incorrect. They had come all the way from Australia.
Oh,
And
no.
they had to wait for Mexico City to contact the embassy or the consulate, probably an embassy if it was in Australia. I believe it was in Sydney, to validate that visa, which can take tons of time. I mean, they have up to, I believe, 30 business days to validate these things. Some people come thinking that they're going to get their visa in one day, or their residency card, not their visa, their residency card in one day, and then immigration's like, oh, there's an error, your name spelled wrong. Like, so many little tiny details you really need to pay attention to. In the US, we don't have the ability apparently to put accent marks on names. And I had a client, her name had an accent mark on it. In her passport, the accent mark is put as an apostrophe. So they had to details, be very detail oriented. You have to, because otherwise you can get down here and you can be spending, another 3 weeks in a hotel that you weren't planning on, or you have to get an exit permit, which is a whole other situation too, because then you exit, and then while your process is being processed, and then you have to come back within 60 days, et cetera, et cetera. But paying very close attention to those details on your visa, making sure everything on your visa matches your passport identically. Another thought. Yeah, another thought on that, everything matching identically. Some consulates don't care, some do, of course, because that's how we roll around here. Your bank statements, for example, my name has my first name, my middle initial, and then my last name on my bank statements. My passport has my full middle name. Some consulates will not accept that. Your passport is basically your golden ticket here, right? You're going to Willy Wonka's factory. Your passport is getting you in the door. And everything needs to match identically to the passport. So that's key. So checking the visa. Okay, cleared, visa, check, approved, check, bank statements approved. You got a visa in your passport. Everything matches your passport identically. Now you're like, all right, cool, I got Mexican residency, right? No, you don't have residency yet. You have a visa to convert to a residency card within Mexico. Now, that can be done anywhere in Mexico. It is supposed to be done, and it's highly advised that you do this at the immigration office in the city where you intend to live. Now, I realize a lot of people are planning for the future, and they don't know where they're going to live. They have an idea, or they think they're going to live somewhere, and then they move here. Say people come to Mexico City, and they're like, whoa, this city is way more overwhelming than I realized. I'm out, So you have to come into Mexico with that visa and your passport to go to an immigration office to then convert that to a residency, an actual residency card. When you enter
Why are
Mexico,
you advising people need to go to the immigration office in the city where they hope to reside?
Because that's what they're supposed to do. Your address is supposed to match where you're going to reside. And I mean, I get a lot of clients that are digital nomads, or they move around a lot, and so that it's hard for them because they're like, well, I don't actually have an address. So they'll use an address of someone that they know is more consistently in the city that they plan on staying in, because immigration has the right to check and make sure that's actually your address. They have the right to do an address check, which also is another gray area because Mexico also does not have any in-country requirements for residency. So it's kind of, but they do have that. So it's highly advised to try and do it where you're going to stay. One, for that reason, just to be as within the law and within the the requirements of immigration as possible. Two, for your own sanity, because an address change in Mexico is not simple. You can't just get online and be like, I changed my address, like you can at the DMV in the United States, or at least we can in Arizona, from what I know. You have to physically go to immigration. You have to get an appointment. You have to fill out paperwork and submit the paperwork for the change of address. And you either have to do this in person or with an authorized representative doing it for you, but they have to have your physical residency card and your physical passport in hand. So say I have someone that lives in, I don't know, Singapore. They're like, hey, we just bought a condo in Merida. We've been using this address of our friend in Mexico City that we stay with every time we come to town. Can you go change our address for us? Because we'll authorize you. No, we need your physical passport and your physical residency card. So you have to be in country to do it as well. So it just makes life easier to do it on your own. I'm sorry, not on your own. Easier to do it in the right place at the right time. I mean, I realize people move. We live in a very nomadic culture these days, right? So, but best to do it that way. And a lot of people rush to be like, oh, I want to go to the easiest city. And you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to go to the city where you plan on finishing, or where you plan on living. But again, if you don't know where you're planning on living, or you're planning for the future, you know what I mean? And you're like, hey, I want to go to Mexico City. I want to hang out. I want to check it out. I need to finish my process. I'm not moving permanently to Mexico until I retire in 3 years. That's a different story.
Right. So when they arrive with their, temporary visa, seal or whatever in their passport.
Yep.
They actually, at immigration,
correct. So
they have to get it stamped or something, right? They just can't come in as like a regular tourist as they usually have in the past.
Correct. So they're going to have this big, like, ironed-in visa. If you've ever traveled to a country that requires a visa, it takes up like almost an entire page of your passport. Oh, small tidbit. Make sure that you have enough pages in your passport when you go to the consulate to get the visa. You have to have X amount of blank pages. A lot of travelers don't have that, and then they get there and they're like, we can't give you your visa. You don't have room in your passport. So that's just another detail. All these little tiny details. So you get to the airport. You arrive. You come off the plane. You cannot enter into Mexico without passing through an agent. that's going to be at a desk. Every airport's a little bit different, but they all look the same. You're coming through, they're herding you like cattle. You're in lines. You get up to a desk where there's an immigration agent. And my suggestion always, so there's never an error, is have your passport open to the visa page. Don't even bother with the first page. Have it open to the visa page, so they know that you are doing what is called canje. It's spelled Canje, and it literally means to exchange or exchange. You're exchanging that visa for a residency card. That visa must be marked Canje. They write it on there. 30 días, because you only have 30 days to get to immigration once you've entered to start your procedure.
Is that an actual, you have to make an appointment, or can you just walk in? Do you make that appointment before you even arrive to Mexico?
To immigration?
Yeah.
Depends on the office, but most of them you need to be here physically in person in order to get your appointment. But no, but this is coming off this is coming off the plane. You're coming off the plane. First thing you do not leave that airport. You do not leave the immigration area. I mean, if you're in the immigration area, you're in the immigration area, right? Like, it's hard to get through a country without going through immigration first. And you do not leave that desk until you have Canje 30 días written on your physical visa. That way, you did your job. If the agent enters you into the system incorrectly, that's on them, but you did your job of showing your visa. So then you'll get processed in, they'll process your passport, whatever, and then you're on your merry way to start the actual canje process. Once you've gone through immigration, your information is in the system. And there's a thing called the FMM, and it stands for Multiple Migratory Form. It's digital now. Back in the day, they used to give these little cards, and it's been digital for a couple years now almost, so this shouldn't be unknown to people, but people that are just starting this process don't know the difference. They used to be physical cards, and it used to be on the physical card they had to mark canje in the 30 days. That now goes in the visa, and the FMM is digital. And in order to go do your canje, you must have that written in your visa and printed out your digital FMM, along with a series of documents that immigration is going to request from you. There is a website called the micrositio, or the microsite, where it shows majority of the information you need. You can fill out the paperwork on your own. Or that's when you say, I don't want to deal with this. I don't know where to start. And you find, a qualified / reputable facilitator, immigration lawyer to do this procedure for you, fill out your paperwork, and help you through the process.
That's a lot.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to the immigration office yet, Risa. That's just.
My God, I'm exhausted.
So am I.
A lot of paper.
It's a lot of paper. They love their paper here, man. They do love their paper here. So, you've gone through immigration at the airport. Everything's been marked incorrectly. You need to now get to an immigration office. So say you're in Mexico City. I only serve Mexico City. We do some work in Cuernavaca, we do some work in Puerto Peñasco, and newly in Ensenada. And so those are the main areas that we focus on. So I can only really speak to each of those offices. I get lots of requests for other offices, and I have people that I can recommend, but every office functions differently. In Mexico City, you must have your series of documents, your original passport, your printed FMM, the one that's digitally entered into the system when you go through immigration, and you have then gone into the system, downloaded it, printed it to go to immigration with all the documents. You go to immigration either at some point during the day, say on a Thursday, say you get there at 1 p.m. There is a line, there is a tent, You get in that line, and at 1 p.m., they're going to give you a number to come back at 3 p.m. to then wait in line to get an appointment for the following day.
What?
Yes.
Oh my God.
You get there at 4 p.m., you just stand, you don't get numbered, you just stand in the line, and you wait to get an appointment for the following day. The earlier you get there, obviously, the earlier your appointment for the following day is going to be. You also have the option of getting there at the crack of dawn. I suggest right now before 6 a.m. to get a same-day appointment. So say you fly in at 9 p.m., and you can't get there because they stop giving out appointments around, 5. You fly in at 9 p.m., you can go to immigration at 4 o'clock the next morning, stand in line, and you'll still hopefully get an appointment for, say, 1:30 p.m., which is the latest appointment they give out. This is in Mexico City. Last week, for example, we got there at, I believe, 4:45 in the morning, and by the time we got up to they came out, and they're like, appointments are done for the day. Get in line. We'll give you a number to come back later this afternoon to give you an appointment for first thing tomorrow.
Wow.
So that's Mexico City. It actually, it's not as hard as it sounds. It's just it's really time consuming. And it's just a lot of back and forth. Where do I line up? Who am I supposed to be talking to? Am I in the right line? Because you'll see a lot of lines. Mexico City is a huge office, right? They take almost 600 people a day, I believe. Again, don't do numbers, so nobody quote me on that.
A lot of math.
It's a lot of math. Too much math. You need to learn Spanish. I'm all about that. It's a massive. So you'll see lines for the information desk. You'll see lines for people that need to go get their biometrics. You'll see lines of attorneys just waiting, chit-chatting away, and then and then there's the line. Sorry. And then there's the line on, for appointments. And that's when you need to get in. So there's that. But it is, and it's really time consuming. I would say in my client's case, a lot of them are like, I can't deal with the mess. I don't have time for this, or I have to work. I have, 2 hours that I can request off on Thursday morning to go do my biometrics. Here, take everything. I can't do this. I don't have time. I don't have the energy. I can't get off work, whatever. Go do it for us, And then there's DIYers that are like, I want to do this, and then the following year they're like, can I hire you to do my renewal because I don't have to wait in that line again. Or there's opposite, people that hire us the first year, and then the second year they're like, I'm going to totally go do this myself. So you have your appointment. Okay, it's Thursday afternoon at 4 p.m. They've given you an appointment. They write your appointment on your piece of paper with their initials and a few other things. So you have to show up the next morning at 9 a.m. I suggest getting there at least 10 to 15 minutes prior, and you get in another line.
Of course.
Where you wait for them to call your name, and then they call your name, and then they send you in the building where you stand in another line.
Oh my God.
Until you are the next person to go up to a window. You're going to get in there, and there's just a bunch of windows. It's kind of like going to a mega bank, right? Just envision a bank with 100 tellers, and everybody's standing in line, and then you sit down in a seat, and then they snake around, and then finally you're in the last seat before you get up to the window, and then someone from the window will call siguiente, which means next, and then you go up and you hand them all of your paperwork, and as long as all of your paperwork is to a T, dot your I's, cross your T's, give a little blood sample, I don't know. Promise your firstborn child.
Yeah, right. That's what it kind of feels like at this point.
We've had situations where we've had to beg. We're like, come on, everything is right. Just please, the foreigners outside, just let us do this. And they're like, okay, fine. So yeah, making sure that everything is exactly as it's supposed to be. You stand there for a while, you make a payment, they come back, with a document, you sign some things, you wait, you sign another thing, and then they give you what is called an oficio, which is the letter that says this has been approved. You go upstairs. Well, actually, it depends if you're doing a renewal, if you're doing your first one. If you're doing your very first one, you have to stop and get your CURP document, which is downstairs. And your CURP document is your basically like your Mexican social security number, but it doesn't function like a social security number would in the US. It's basically your foreign ID, your Mexican, not your foreign ID, your Mexican ID number. So you get your CURP, then you go upstairs, you turn in paperwork, fingerprints, photos. My rule is if you do not look like a frog, a criminal, or an alien in your photo, you're not actually a Mexican resident, because the photos are so bad. They use some sort of special, like, I don't know, crazy lens. And then you wait again, they print your card, they call your name, good to go. Here also it's very important because they'll print out like a sample of the card before they actually print the physical card on the plastic. And that sample, you want to make sure everything is correct. I've had people where they put them in as a male. I've had people where, you know, their birth date's incorrect. I had them in January accidentally put 2023 instead of 2024. So you need to make sure that all of that stuff is correct before they print it. Otherwise, you have to go back and get it fixed. And
Oh God, no.
no. So that's Mexico City. And Mexico City is massive, you know, and it does require either a specific level of patience or a specific level of knowledge or the willingness and to just hire someone to take care of it for you. Other offices are a lot easier. Other offices, you just show up. Cuernavaca, for example, you show up. We usually show up at 7:30. They don't open until 9. We show up at 7:30 because we always want to be first. And, you know, you just have all of your paperwork. You have to have copies of your passport. You have your passport. There's no appointments. First come, first serve. Like, you're the first one in line. Come on in. You register your name. You register that. Someone looks over your paperwork. They say, okay, good to go. They send you into another section of the office where they then actually process your visa and make sure that everything is correct in the system. They do that, and then you wait. Biometrics, fingerprints, card. Biometrics are fingerprints, but card, photo, and then you walk out, usually same day in Cuernavaca. But you should be living in Cuernavaca or have a Cuernavaca address in order to go to the Cuernavaca office. So yeah, different offices are different. Mexico City right now, you can still get next or same day appointments. Cuernavaca, first come, first serve. Puerto Peñasco, otherwise known as Rocky Point, first come, first serve. Ensenada, first come, first serve. Playa del Carmen, Mérida, 2 to 3 weeks out. Cancun, I believe 2 to 3 weeks out. And if you are using a facilitator, they cannot make an appointment for you. They can, but you must be in the country. You have to have all the offices that I know of, because we have a group of people, professionals, that we, you know, talk about all the what's going on and updates and hey, this person needs help in this city. Can you know, I pass them your number, sort of thing. And everyone requires you to have the physical passport, and if it's a renewal, also the physical card of the client in order to make that appointment.
Wow, my God, Gabrielle, this has been so amazing. It's, you know, it's a very, it's like complicated yet simple, right? If you know what you're doing, then I guess it's not so complicated.
Correct.
But yeah, I mean, so as we kind of wrap this up, if people have more questions or they want to hire you, where can they reach you?
The best place to reach me is via WhatsApp. I can share my number with you later and you can put it in there. That's preferable. They can also reach me via email. They'll get a faster response via WhatsApp, but email also works. It's just drgresidency@gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page, so you can check out, you know, updates and things like that. It's, I actually don't know. I'll have to send you the URL. I don't have it memorized.
I think that's Dr. G Residency something.
So, yeah, DRG, Mexican Immigration and Residency, something like that. But yeah, I will. If you search it, you're gonna find me. And yeah, I mean, that's just, we didn't even touch other routes. There are other routes which I can give little tidbits about. Like if you're married to a Mexican citizen, or if you have a spouse that's a Mexican resident, you can get residency via them. If you have a child in Mexico, you automatically become a permanent resident. Well, not automatically, you have to go through the procedure, but that qualifies you for automatic permanent residency. I think that's it. Marriage, children, spouse, marriage. Or like, for example, I'm a permanent resident. I can bring in my dad. An adult child can bring in an adult parent, obviously. An adult child can bring in a parent. But a parent cannot bring in an adult child. So if I wanted my dad to get permanent residency, he could do it through me. And then he could bring in his wife, and because then you have the spousal connection. Yeah. So there's various other ways, but the consulate standard way to do it is what we really dove into.
No, that's so great. I mean, and clearly it's really helpful to do research before you even embark on this whole journey of trying to get residency and getting all the information so you know what the best path for you, the best and the easiest, I think, because clearly there are different routes.
Yep.
But oh my gosh, this has been so great. Thank you so much. As
You're
always,
very
it's
welcome.
so great to see your smiling face.
Thank you for having me.